gotta move quick. Come on. Run. Come on. Come on.
Welcome to the Fandom Outpost, your podcast for all things pop culture.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fandom Outpost. Today we have a side quest that Jim and I decided to take on, starting off the new year. How you doing, Jim?
Good, Bob. How's it going?
Good. I'm Bob, and we're going to take on Wolfman, the Universal picture that came out just a few days ago in January, and give you some thoughts about it, what we thought about it, and give you a quick spoiler-free recap, and then we'll get into some spoilers after. We'll let you know and then give you some of our thoughts. What do you think, Jim? 2025. I think it was a pretty good year last year of horror, so I'm kind of it's going to be a tough one to top that last year. I was pretty impressed.
I think we're off to a good start, at least for me anyways. I really was looking forward to this. I wasn't looking forward to this last year when a photo leaked from Universal Studios Park Hollywood Horror Nights, and they had the teeniest. It did. They had the teeniest little, I don't know, segment of their haunted area that had a Wolfman banner and a guy that looked just terrible. It looked like
Wolfman the musical or something. It was
weird. It was so weird. It looked like this kind of, I don't know, like a homeless man or something that was unkempt.
I'm like, I hope this is just like
and people were like
park thing,
right? And then afterwards, some trailers, teaser trailer, and trailers started creeping out, and it really started to look very interesting. A different take on this, right?
Yeah. That's what we're going to get into, because it definitely is a different angle on the Wolfman lore. And well, let's start with some of the facts here. It's directed by Lee Whannell. He did the Invisible Man remake in 2020, which I really enjoyed that one. So when I kind of put that together, I was kind of looking forward to seeing what this was going to do, because he has this little bit of a twist on some of the older titles, right?
Right. Kind of updating them for modern day.
Yeah, he did a film called Upgrade, which I haven't seen. I've heard good things about, and Insidious Chapter 3, which gets a lot of praise for that series. It's a Blumhouse production. Jason Blum produced, starring Christopher Abbott as Blake. And I don't know if you've seen him before, but he was in Poor Things.
Yeah, smaller part, yeah.
And It Comes at Night, which was an interesting movie, I thought, too. I believe it's A24, I think. Can't remember exactly. Julia Garner plays his wife, and I think most people would recognize her from Ozark, who plays Ruth Langmore, which was such an awesome role and a great series. If you haven't seen that, I've seen it, and it's really, really good.
I think she's currently in the Apartment, which is kind of the Rosemary's Baby prequel.
Yeah, is it on Paramount or something?
I think so.
It's one of those streaming channels I don't have, so I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it yet, but it looked pretty interesting.
So that's kind of the facts and figures. It runs about an hour 43. It was kind of a quick, kind of a compressed story that moved along pretty well, right? Just had some things at the front that kind of built what the platform was going to be, what the philosophy of it or whatever, and then it kind of takes off a bit, right?
Right. It's tight. It's got a very small cast, and a very specific location for it, which gave you a very good sense of place, where most of the action takes place.
Right.
Do you want to talk about how it starts out?
Yeah, let's just do a quick recap. We start off, it comes up with some title card, right, about what had happened 30 years ago to a hiker that went missing
in Oregon.
Correct.
Is where
And what happens to him? He gets
an Oregon hiker yeah, just this is just text you're reading on the screen and over some really beautiful landscaping, landscape
Hmm.
photography, and it speaks of a hiker that went missing in Oregon, and it is believed that may have contracted a um, animal-borne disease that affects the local wildlife. And the indigenous people of the area have a name for that, and they call it the face of the wolf.
Hmm.
And then it just kind of leads us into a father and son as they get ready for their uh, daily trek.
There's a son with his father, right?
Yeah, I think it's specifically 1995 is when the film opens,
There you go.
and the kid's maybe about 10 years old, maybe 8 to
Yeah.
10.
Hmm.
Very strict father, and
Just the two of them in this
just the two
cabin.
of them living kind of on this really super remote house farm. There's a house, there's a greenhouse, and then there's a barn, and that's
Hmm.
it. Um, and it shows them going out on a hunting trip.
Hmm. Father and son hunting for deer or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
and some strange occurrence happens as they kind of separate, and we get a little bit of some of the theme of father son, or father child wanting to protect the child kind of
Yeah,
thing.
the father makes it very clear that he can't. The kid has to not be daydreaming, and he's got to be always on guard. And the world doesn't take anything to die.
Did you
And he
take that
can't.
as something happened to his wife? I took it like
Yeah,
something
a little
happened
bit.
that she
There's a lot of
must.
little subtle things that if you kind of look to it, if you pay attention, that there's some kind of underpinnings of. Yeah, obviously the mom is not around.
His tone was kind of like, was like not good about
Right.
life in general. Like it could happen.
Yeah.
You could be gone in a second. And I was like,
Right.
ooh, something must have happened here.
Right.
But without getting into too deep of spoilers, I guess they encounter something mysterious, and we get our first encounter with a strange creature, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're as they get separated, um, the son comes across this in his scope, the silhouette of a strange creature, and then it disappears, and then dad shows up, and things aren't right. And before we go any further, I want to say that the sound design
Yeah.
for this film was fantastic.
This is in the
We
plus column. Yes,
Yeah, this is in the Way
definitely.
Plus column, and it's very intentionally done. We saw it at one of our favorite screens, which is we'll give a shout out to the Imagine Theaters, and they have what they call the EMAX Theater, which is like one of the largest screens in the state. And I forget which sound system they're using, but
Atmos. Yeah.
Atmos, and it is fully enveloping you. You feel like you're in the forest. You're hearing all
Yeah, it was amazing.
leaves
The sound
rustle and
design
branches, and it really
was
kind
amazing.
of gave you the sense that you were right there. So they, sensing danger, they scurry up to a tree blind, and while the thing that they were looking at, it's kind of you hear it kind of stalking around the blind, and the dad kind of sees it in its scope and gets a shot off. There's some building a lot of really good tension with just the simple thing of like you can see out of the range of the walls of the blind, you can see the breath of the animal kind of raise.
Yeah, that was very effective.
It was really really good, and just subtle. It's just a subtle thing. um, but
That what
they
you don't see was, I was like, when they were looking, they showed the scope, and it's the what you
Yes,
can't see on the outer edge of the scope that I was just waiting for something to.
yeah, where you were waiting for a jump scare for it to pop right up in the scope,
Yeah,
right? So
just like, I guess well, let's move on. We won't
yeah,
spoil
yeah,
too much
but
about
we won't
that.
spoil it.
It's some good build up, and something, that encounter uh, goes okay, but we move to 30
We move
years
back
later.
home. Yeah, well, before we go 30 years later, we move back home, and
Oh yeah.
um, the son, it's later that evening, and the son hears the father talking over like a CB radio
Mm-hmm.
in the basement, um, to somebody else, saying that he had seen the creature, and the son's kind of overhearing this conversation. He
Mm-hmm.
says it's real and I've seen it, and you kind of look over, and the father has a notepad, and he's got all these little, like he's been taking notes on it, and he's maybe been stalking it. And he's like, the thing is on two legs, and it doesn't look this, and it doesn't look that, and you get a kind of glimpse a little more into the dad, and
Yeah.
you kind of see he's got stockpiled, and he looks like he's like a survivalist, and you see like a tattoo on his arm, and kind of
Well, now,
filling you in with him without giving
well,
too
now
much
you're
away.
making me think that maybe something happened to the wife with the creature.
Oh, that's a good. I didn't think about that, but quite possibly.
That
Yeah,
maybe he has this vendetta to find it. I mean,
yeah.
now that you've mentioned that,
They
I
live in
just
a
thought of that.
very, very isolated situation where they're at, very remote. To the fact that
Right.
the only way you can talk to somebody is via a CB radio. So
Right.
certainly
So
living
there's a
off the
you,
grid.
you you get this strained relationship with the father and son that it's going to play a little bit into the psychology, I guess, of what we move forward now, 30 years, and
Yeah, 30 years.
the,
It
the
specifically
boy
says
who's Blake, by
right.
Christopher played by Christopher Abbott, is he's in his 30s. He's married. He has a young uh, child,
Daughter, right?
Ginger. He has the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Ginger. A wonderful actor that played that, and he has this protective thing with the daughter, and he's kind of a stay-at-home dad. He's a writer, and the wife, Charlotte, played by Julia Garner, is kind of the breadwinner at the moment,
At the
and
moment, yeah.
she's a
She,
journalist at a local media company, and you get the feeling that she doesn't quite have the time put in with the daughter. There's some sort of strained relationship between the mother and daughter, that the daughter kind of leans to the dad a lot, and they have more of a connection because they're together more, it seems, and that's going to play into things too. So
there's some
that's
things
where
they're setting
we
up there
start to build that. Yeah.
that you're going, okay, this is gonna come back. You know that right off the bat, that there's the
Right.
connection is gonna come back. So
And then we'll skim over a bit, and he gets something in the mail saying that his father has been deemed deceased.
legally deemed deceased after, what do you say, 8 to 10 years or something like that, or
He had been missing, and they
right.
finally closed the case and called him deceased. And he gets the paperwork and the keys to the cabin. So in order to maybe rejuvenate their marriage, which seems to be a little bit on the rocks, he talks to them. Let's all go out to the cabin and spend some time together, take some time off, work from remote, and we'll just spend some time together, all three of us, and go back to my old cabin, and sets it off into what we're going to encounter for the rest of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where it all goes to hell.
Yeah, the trip out to the cabin, they encounter um, a former someone else living out there, and it was a former child when Blake was a child, and he was like, "Oh, which way is it to the cabin?" They kind of come to a fork in the road, and the guy goes, "Well, I'll take you there," and he's here to look. The wife's kind of like, "This guy looks really shady," and they found him in a blind with a gun, and of course he's like, "Look, everybody up here has guns. That's the
Right.
deal."
I couldn't quite make out where that character was going to go. It just seemed like you were very sus of this guy.
Right, you were supposed to be sus of this guy, so
Is
he
he
it's like, this is weird. This is something that we don't
off his
encounter back
rocker? Is he,
in the city where we're from. So,
yeah.
and he's being real cagey, and he's telling them, don't be out at the woods at night because there's no lights and there's no help,
Right. And the wife, Charlotte, says, we're tough people. And he's like, you don't look tough.
right.
But yet he says,
That's a good thing.
to the father, like, that's he says to the father, "It's a good thing. You should be proud of your family. They're beautiful." And it shows that they have a safe life and all this. So,
Right. So mid
yeah,
this conversation, something crosses the road, which
right,
causes their moving truck to veer off the road and into a precarious space. It's gonna trap between some trees, and
right.
the passenger falls out. It's on its side, and the passenger falls out of the side, and it's not too far that he falls, but
Yeah, it's like 6 feet or something
right,
because they're pinned on a branch or tree or
right,
something. Yeah,
right, and the father is able to get his family to scurry out the window to the top of the truck, and as he's looking down to the guy who fell out of the truck who's still alive, something takes him off camera.
right. This is our
So
first
this is
encounter.
our first, yeah, our first current day encounter with whatever it is. And so the family gets down and they escape, and they're running, being chased by whatever this is. You're not seeing it, to the house. He recognized where he was at, and he's like, the house is over here. And they get in the house, and then the thing is pounding on the door. It's like right behind them on their heels.
And in that escape, the father husband gets scratched.
Yes, he got scratched in the escape
By this creature that's attacking them. They escape to the house, and then.
So this is the house he grew up in, and everything is off, and
Right.
they figure out how to restore the power, and the power gets restored. And as they're in the house, and they're seeing the kind of creature out the window, and just its shadows kind of going past the window, its silhouette. And once they get there, they go in the basement where the dad had the radio, and there's no phones. There's no phone signal where they're at.
No service, right.
No service. That's how remote that they are. And the wife discovers the husband was injured. So this will be the sticking point for people on this movie as to what kind of creature this is. And if you are going to this movie looking for an American Werewolf in London, or The Howling, or Dog Soldiers, or any of these kind of transformations, this is not what you're going to get.
I heard it compared often to The Fly.
That was the first thing I thought when he laid down and his face was kind of getting blotchy and molty. It's kind of a Fly transformation. Yes.
Fly takes place over more time. This is a shorter transformation for the father that got scratched.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, this is not the Howling at the Moon. I mean, that's what a lot of people are having an issue with, that have issues with this movie, is that it's not the Howling at the Moon. It's a full moon and I'm turning into a werewolf type thing.
Right. The biggest knock against this movie is that they called it The Wolfman.
Yeah.
And with that name comes a certain expectation. So
right.
I wish they would have
a lot of baggage, right?
It has a lot of baggage. It has that decades of werewolf mythology that you're looking for. So, but this is challenging your preconceived notions of that. So,
yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So they're playing on that.
We're not going to spoil the end here, but after there's a transformation and there's some encounters, and I don't even know I don't want to say ruin it right now, but
right.
Yeah, stuff happens, and it's kind of more of a traditional storytelling of what happens to a werewolf. So we'll just leave it at that. But we're going to get in now. We'll get into for the last portion of this our thoughts, and then this will include spoilers. So if you want to not hear spoilers, you can tune off, come back after you see it. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So yeah. So what was your take? What was your feeling of that then, about the different take on the werewolf story here? Because it's definitely different, and you got to be into that to enjoy this, I think.
Right. So none of the transformation of this character relied upon the moon, because that's not a part of this werewolf's mythology. And I wish they would have called the movie The Face of the Wolf, which
Yeah.
was what the indigenous people called the sickness.
Yeah.
So,
Something a little, I think it may have been.
but I'm sure that calling it the Wolfman helps Universal retain the name the Wolfman. The Wolfman is different from werewolves in the fact that the Wolfman is something that Universal coined and made their own particular character. So, and it came with, and they made up the mythology and the curse, and
That's true. It is the curse, right?
and the attachment to Eastern European legend and all this kind of stuff. That's
Folklore,
where they tied
yep.
it. Folklore. They tied all that in.
And I guess the things I liked, I'll mention real quick. You mentioned the sound design, which is tremendous. It's a tremendous sound. The soundtrack was really nice, and it blended in with the sound design, which
Yes,
I
it
thought was wonderful.
wasn't overpowering at all.
Very cinematic, and it really immersed you in that, I thought. Another cool feature is something that I don't think I've ever I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen this kind of like wolf vision, where you would kind of do a dolly from
You do
like
kind of a
his wife,
360.
and almost like a 360, and then it transitions into what the husband is transitioning into a werewolf sees in his eyes, and you see like her eyes light up and the color of her face changes. It's almost an infrared kind of thing, and the sound gets muffled, like he's not understanding English.
That was super interestingly done. The slow heightening of his senses.
Yeah.
From smell, where he smelled the father's jerky that was locked in this room. He was like, "Oh, this smells terrible."
Yeah.
And then, the thumping that was coming from upstairs and what caused that was great. That was really good. That was like, spider. Oh man, yeah. Yeah, and it was just this tiny spider, and it was just that he was hearing it like it sounded like someone moving furniture upstairs. There was a spider crawling
around
the
roof or something. Yeah,
right.
Yep, that was effective.
Yeah, so that was interesting, and the fact that as he was becoming infected and transforming into this character, he lost the ability to speak. Like he would talk to her, and she wouldn't understand what he was saying. And when you got the wolf vision, it was coming back the same way. Like he couldn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I thought that part of it. There's some, if you're into body horror, there's some definite body horror scenes in this movie.
Yeah, that's some crazy arm action going on early on when he was they checked out his infection, it had gotten really bad.
That his wife dressed, right?
Yeah. His wound became super gross, and he took care of it like an animal would take care of it.
He's just like,
he was just gnawing his arm. That was
teeth
gross.
falling out. If you have a phobia about that, there's a few of those scenes.
Yeah, that was very The Fly. That was very.
What else? He gets caught in a bear trap, and
and
proceeds to,
and like many animals can do, they proceed to free them from their trap via gnawing their limb off. So.
Yeah, that was something. The running on the fours, I thought that was
on
cool.
The fours, that was good. Yeah.
So I mean,
that kind of helped it
had some stuff going for it. I guess my problem with it, and I want to ask you about your problems with it, if you had any, was I know they were trying to go for this generational dysfunction thing with the father and him when he was a child, and then
very much so.
But I don't know if it really stuck it enough in that back half of that movie, the second and third act. I just don't know.
They were kind of
that.
Yeah. You could in the prologue that you could see that his father was very strict, like military strict, like we're getting up at 0700 or whatever it was, or
right, and clean your dish and let's go.
Everything had to be packed and ready to go, and it was part of that survivalist mentality that character was exhibiting.
Right,
but when they cut back to modern day, as we're first introduced to him as an adult. And he gets cross with his daughter because she wasn't listening, and he kind of gives her his version of that "I can't protect you" speech.
Right.
And then he comes off very angry, and then he apologizes to her
Right.
for, sometimes when people care, they come off very angry.
And you're right. You're left to wonder: does he have some of his father's, domineering characteristic in him? And he has a bit of that with his wife, who comes into the apartment on a business call, and he's asking her politely, "Can you take that in the other room?" And she keeps going and going, and then, "Can you please take?" He's cooking dinner, and then when she gets up, when she gets off the phone, she's like, "Can you please not do that again?" And he's like, so there's a rift between them.
Right.
It's under.
And they had a very
surface.
interesting conversation at the dinner table when he announced that his father had passed, and he's like, "Well, I chose not to speak to him, and for the last, was it, 30 years." And
Right.
So he goes, "I'm kind of sad that I can't now. Now I want to talk to him." So
Right.
you could see that he kind of, once he was old enough to get out of that situation with his dad, he took off. Right. So
yeah, that's what. I was trying to figure out. You said something interesting, which I kind of agree with. Is I almost would have liked this movie a little better if it would have just been that opening prologue of the father-son dynamic.
That was super interesting.
I'm like, I would have been down with that, as him as the werewolf hunter, the father, and the son's got to become a man, and that could have been something.
What if, in that scenario, what if the thing that they were hunting was the mom?
Yeah. Because I'm telling you, now that we've done this podcast, I definitely think there's something that happened to the mom, the wife.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense now. I feel
because
that
the dad's got a bug in his craw about this creature. He's, like you said, he's hunting him down and taking notes and all this, and something's up. So that's our little theory, I guess. We'll keep on the Fandom Outpost,
because the house is pre the creature attacking the house, or perhaps it had previously. The house has bars on all the windows, right? The whole thing is boarded up, and maybe that's part of the survivalist mentality of the father.
Right. Yeah.
And in the early scenes when you see the basement kind of command survival center, the shelves are stocked with rations and almost doomsday preppery, like.
Yep. Well, they are way out there. Yeah.
And if you notice, when he was having that conversation on the radio with the other person, saying that he had seen the creature, and he asked the other guy, he says, "Don't you want to make sure your son is safe?" And that's the son that we meet later in the movie.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. And apparently the voice on the other end of the radio is the director.
Oh, really?
I had read that earlier. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So that's the kid that it was in reference. So
Derek, I guess, is that
yes,
the kid's name that he encounters later on the travel back 30 years later. Yeah, and
right.
They take him and Derek tries to show him where their cabin is, because he lost Blake forgot where it was in the woods, because it's so dense and so away from everything.
Right.
With
and he
trees
hadn't been
and
there in 20 plus years. So
in the forest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What did anything bother you that turned you off a little at all?
Once I you need to leave that howl in, please. Perfectly
Children
timed.
of the night.
Perfectly timed. Once you bought into the fact that it wasn't going to be a traditional werewolf, I was okay with it. So, which is real funny, because I don't know, the Wolfman has a certain connotation to me, and I expect him to look this way. So I'm really going against the same feelings that, this is the opposite feeling I had for Nosferatu. So I was okay with this Wolfman being different. I was not okay with when we finally get to our Nosferatu pod. I was not okay with that character looking so different. So
I was curious to know what you thought of that, because I know you're a makeup effects guy. That's your thing, and you catch what's going down.
So,
and I was real curious to know about that, and then this movie too, because I know it does some nice practical effects.
Yeah, very much so. The way the character, the antagonist character looked when they were being attacked in the truck, the second truck, when they were trying to escape the house.
Oh, the pickup. Yeah.
The pickup, he looked great. I thought he looked really good.
Hmm.
I thought he looked good in the combat at the end. When they finally killed him, he kind of looked really feral and
Right.
more werewolfy.
Yeah, you're right. A little hairier and all that.
Yeah. But you're expecting a werewolf to be covered in hair, right? And
Right, like
these guys
full on,
are
yeah.
not. They're very kind of mangy looking.
Yeah, it's almost like it could have been a zombie. It could have been any kind of creature,
Right.
really, in this,
So,
right? It didn't necessarily have to be a werewolf,
right. So the Wolfman
if we're going in this direction
werewolf
of
cinematically,
illness.
cinematically, your werewolf character is sympathetic. He's a tragic character, so they did that.
Mm-hmm.
They did it, and he was slowly losing his humanity. So they did that correctly. There was no silver bullet that you had to kill this because we didn't have that mythology in this film. They didn't revert back to normal once they died. That didn't happen.
Right.
They stayed a beast character.
Permanently, right.
Permanently. It didn't take the moon for them to change. That had zero influence in anything.
I think that's going to bother a lot of people, I think.
Right. It really twists the whole werewolf mythology if you're looking at it as a werewolf film.
Right.
Which it's advertising itself as a werewolf film, so I can understand people have a legit reason to be meh about that. I was entertained the entire film. I was engrossed in it.
Yeah, I was engaged. Right.
I could see, there were a lot of like heavy-handed things where you're with the daughter where you're going, "Oh, this is going to come back. What am I thinking?" That whole
the little bond they have.
Yeah. So you knew
and daughter.
They were laying all this work, and the identity of the final werewolf is you could almost consider it being the original one that they saw until you get to the end where you see the tattoo.
And it's
the father.
Right. Which is I was surprised. I don't know. I mean, did you
there was a minute there where I was like, are they going to do that? Is that going to be a thing? Because we never saw the dad.
Right.
I mean, the dad could have just as easily showed up back at the house and as the dad and as an old man and killed the werewolf. So
yeah, it didn't necessarily have to be the dad, but
no,
I think there's something more with the family that we'd have to read into, like the mother, like you said, the wife, and the father. Maybe there was something more of a connection with the creature in the woods than we were given.
Right.
So
that's
for us to fantasize about, I guess.
Yeah, sure. That's
or theorize.
As a film, I was more entertained by it than.
Here it comes.
Come at me, internet. I was more entertained by it than Nosferatu. Please understand that I didn't say it is a better film than Nosferatu. I was more entertained than Nosferatu.
Yeah, I really look forward to getting into Nosferatu with the three of us.
Yeah.
But without getting too deep, I kind of agree. Nosferatu, I just, once I got in its, I get this straight, that Nosferatu is a technically beautiful, perfect looking film.
Yes.
Mastery of art. But as far as the story, as soon as I caught up to the beats of the story, I was like, okay. And then there's a few little twists, but basically I was like, oh, this is the story. And I kind of went along for the ride. And whereas this movie, Wolfman, twists things and makes you like think about it a little differently.
Right.
So take that for what you will, I guess, right?
I suppose much in the way that their Invisible Man took the basic premise of being invisible and changed the whole concept as to why someone was invisible.
Right. There was a lot of domestic abuse theme in that too.
Right.
That was a really well done movie, The Invisible Man. I did enjoy that. I know in this house we all like it. That was a good one. And this, and it was almost there for me. I'd probably give it out of out of 5? I'd be close to 3 probably.
This one?
Probably in the 2.5, 3, somewhere in there. I would rate it. How about you?
I'd give this one about a 3.5.
Yeah.
I would, if he was a traditional, but that's on me
Right,
wanting to
right. It's
go
your
werewolf. So,
preconceptions, right?
I didn't get to see the werewolves movie that was out a couple months ago. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
probably more of what I'm expecting as a werewolf movie. So this
Right.
this one kind of challenged me a little bit, and the slow fly-like transformation, without him turning into actual canine was
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It was different. So, but yeah, it suffers from being called the Wolfman. It
Yeah,
shouldn't
and I
be.
think it's a perfect Saturday afternoon monster matinee. That's we
Yeah,
saw
we
it,
were
and it was
thinking it.
like the
Yeah,
perfect kind of movie. You didn't have to
good
think too
popcorn
hard.
flick.
Got some chills out of it, and had
Yep,
some fun. So
yep. Not everything had to be a jump scare. They built tension really good in its tension scenes. The cast was good. Acting was good. It was a tight cast. There were only 5 characters
yeah,
that you saw on screen, really.
yeah, it's a tight cast. I
It,
can't even
it
say it'd be
it's
past 10, 12 people in that movie.
it really created a sense of space that you were isolated out there, and that's another part of isolationist horror where you're kind of stuck in a
Mm-hmm.
home battling something. Um,
Right.
you kind of understood the layout of the house and the greenhouse and where everything was at, and the
Yeah.
barn and all of that.
So to wrap it up, I guess I mean I enjoyed it. It sounds like you enjoyed it. I
I
just wish
enjoyed
it
it.
could have been could have maybe tied some things together a little bit more with the family dynamic angle toward the
Right.
end. It's definitely a tragic movie. I kind of left feeling like, oh, this guy didn't deserve this.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
He tried
definitely.
everything in his life to not become this
Yeah.
character, right?
So it's definitely has some sad undertones or overtones to
But
it,
it's,
and
you
yeah,
know, and
but it had some things going for it.
this will not go down in like, oh, when I hear the Wolfman, I will not think of this version of the Wolfman ever.
Right.
I won't. I was visually. I'm saying,
Right.
if I guess what I wanted was the movie that they already made back in 2010, which was the Benicio del
Yeah.
Toro
Mm-hmm.
criminally underrated Wolfman. That is the Wolfman.
Mm.
With Larry. That's the whole. Universal doing the whole Larry Talbot and
The whole thing.
the whole going back to the curse and all that stuff. And he is a wolf man, so he's
Right.
more man. He's not a werewolf, which is when you get a wolf's head attached to like a body,
Right.
like let's say like the Howling or something.
Right.
So
I really like the Howling. Howling's one of
yeah,
my
it's
favorites.
it's great. So
Howling, Silver Bullet, American Werewolf is probably
yeah,
my
maybe
favorite
we'll
one.
talk to Mark, and maybe up this upcoming spooky season or something, we'll do like a werewolf
Yeah,
episode.
ranking
Some of our
or
favorites.
discussion. That's
Yeah.
probably that's a good idea. So last question I guess I have is what I'd like to think of, which determines how much I think you may like a movie, is will you buy it pre-order, buy it, catch it just on a shelf to buy it, rent it, or just skip it,
Interesting.
or stream it?
This is one I don't need to own.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also one where if I'm passing it,
On
so it's
sale
funny.
on the shelf.
Well, it's funny because this is so now we're in a era of streaming movies where back when it was cable and you used to channel surf
Right.
and you would stop on something,
Mm-hmm.
And go, oh, this is this movie. I'm at this point in the film and I'm gonna stop and watch it.
Right.
Well, now I can't do that anymore. That doesn't present itself like a Shawshank or a Jaws or something where
Right.
you
got to find
it's
it.
like now you have to search things out and intentionally watch it. So
It's like that random jukebox kind of theory, where it's like you just
right,
randomly play. Oh, I love this song.
yeah. I don't own the album, but I love this song, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, me too. I
so
think
yeah,
I'm with you. I don't think I need to own it. I probably would. Maybe. Man, that's a tough one. I may just stream this one. I think if it's on.
yeah, this is a streamer for me. I mean, it might be like, I might stream it to show somebody who hadn't seen it.
Right.
So,
It'd be fun to do that. I think it's a good watch, and maybe around spooky season it would be fun to watch.
yeah.
But I don't think I need to.
texted my daughter. I go, "Oh, this is pretty good. If you guys are looking for a date night movie,
Right.
check it out." So
Yeah, it's not going to be, and going in with some, like we just warned you. I think you'll be okay with it. Don't think it's your traditional werewolf. So I guess we'll end it.
And I guess I can appreciate it for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it tried something different. So
yeah. I love movies, horror movies in particular. They take big swings, and this one took some swings. So give them some credit.
Yeah.
Right. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that, to the Fandom Outpost. And check us out on social media. Our Instagram page is the Fandom Outpost, and on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you and chat and talk about things. We try to post trailers that are coming out and stuff like that, movie related, or collecting movie memorabilia, stuff like that. So join in the conversation. We'd really appreciate it. And next time we'll hopefully get the three of us together and do a standard episode, right?
Yep, we're overdue. So
Kicking off 2025. We'll see you next time then on the Fandom Outpost. Thanks for watching and joining us today.
Thanks.